Hello, this is the Hypercast, and this is your host, Xavier Evans.
This is your co-host, Brandon.
This is your co-host, Nathaniel.
It's co-host, Charles.
Today, we'll be talking about my story that I am writing called Awakening, as well as some underrated hidden gems. Moving to my story, Awakening, it was lightly inspired by one of my childhood games called Link's Awakening, Legend of Zelda for the Game Boy. I was almost going to say Advanced. There were two versions of the game released, one featuring colored graphics and one simply black and white. The first one that was released was Link's Awakening Standard, which featured the game in its main story. The second one was the deluxe version, Link's Awakening DX, that released for the Game Boy Color, which was also reverse compatible with the original Game Boy. But the DX version featured the Color Dungeon. That's where the character or the player could utilize the fact that the game now had colors for a special dungeon that asks you to go like, okay, so this color goes here, or answer this riddle regarding like, okay, what's this color? It doesn't even sound like a cool gimmick. It just sounds boring nowadays. Like, look at us. We have colors now in our video game. But that's besides the point. What makes Link's Awakening truly amazing is its story and how it can easily bring you to tears once the characters have grown on you and you reach that bittersweet ending. And I've decided to take a character that has always been dear to me through my whole life and make that into a story, but also take a little twist on Link's Awakening, or not even a little twist, a huge twist. It's essentially my own thing now. So my story is called Awakening. It features a young adult. His name is Denny, and it starts with him waking up in this dark place. Air quotes, dark place. I tend to start my characters in places that don't make much sense. That way I can transition them into the story without having to ask myself seriously, okay, how am I going to start this out and put the pieces together to make this story become something? And after Denny leaves this place, he hears a voice. Actually, this is before he even wakes up in the dark place. He hears a voice, so a girl calling out to him. She says here, and she reaches a hand out to him, and he reaches for it. That's when he wakes up in the dark place. And after some observations of taking a look around the place, which is utterly chaos, there's islands twisting and swirling, there's river streams twisting and swirling, gravity is false, and there's no laws of nature in this area. He walks as a ball of light sort of starts glowing orange, and it radiates a familiar warmth. After walking into this light, he shields his eyes, and he wakes up on the beach next to this girl who's looking down at him. That's when he meets one of the major characters named Sylvia, who would in turn be one of the main protagonists of the story, and as well as Denny's right-hand sword. So after meeting Sylvia, who's an extremely energetic girl, and Denny is not so much like that, but definitely influenced by Sylvia's warm nature. They meet an old man named Donovan after settling down. And what Donovan serves to do is to explain to Denny that upon coming here on this island, he was found drifting there by Sylvia. And he cannot leave the island, otherwise he would end up coming back to the island. The only way to leave the island would be to wake up the spirits. There are 3 legendary spirits that sleep on the island of Reliqua, which I don't think I've mentioned the name yet. The island's real name is called Post Reliqua, but we go by Reliqua later in the story. And what Post Reliqua means is after rest. The only way to get off this island would be to awaken the legendary 3 spirits, being the fox, the owl, and the whale. The fox guards the forest, and the fox's name is Ephoris. The owl guards the skies, and its name is Setharos. And the whale that guards the waters of the island is named Sirius. Then he must wake up these 3 beings or entities from their nightmares using the resting sword, also called the Reliquian sword. The Reliquian sword provides a challenge on the main protagonist, as it will only operate if the user has a strong will. To even pull up the sword, the character must have a strong resolve. Otherwise, it'll result in the sword destroying your brain until you're an empty shell without the capacity to even think. So after passing the sword's trial and as well as Donovan's trial, he's able to raise his sword high above his head towards the sky. After receiving the sword, him and Sylvia go off to awaken these 3 spirits, starting with the fox spirit in the forest. So that's awakening so far, and what I have in store for it right now is a series of serious moments where Denny will have to make some really hard decisions for himself and for others, with drawbacks that'll result in, will he really leave this island, or does he want to save the people that he has grown on and that mean a lot to him? There are 3 major swords in the story. The first one being the Reliquian sword, the second one being the Sword of Awakening, and the third one, which is not mainly a sword that's going to progress the story, but becomes Sylvia's sword. It's called the Danko sword. The Danko sword is reliant on the user's soul. It reflects the color of their soul, and it is only as strong as the character's will. I like the swords in the series. I like to make them reliant or affected by the character's will. So for example, if someone using the Danko sword were to have a weak sense of self or a weak motive, the sword would be useless. Someone with a strong resolve would result in the most power from the sword possible.
This is a good start question. But a question I've been wondering: Are you planning to make any characters represent us?
Not necessarily, but it could be possible.
Like characters take inspiration, like each one of us has not like a alteration, like a persona of us, like how we view ourselves. Like I view myself more as somebody who doesn't like peace, but I don't like evil, but I'm more of a trick. I'm always view myself as somebody who doesn't like either side and would always cause chaos for both. It's how I always viewed myself. Or Nathaniel, where I don't know how you view yourself, or Brandon, I don't know. Brandon looks like that person who views himself as like I'm as a hoarder. I'm sorry, but you view it.
If you're making me a character, give me a beanie or a bandana. Have it go right here. That's it.
I may take some inspirations from my own life, but the only inspirations from my life so far are going to be the focus on mental growth and preservation and my childhood game, Link's Awakening.
Oh, I'm just asking, well, just maybe some fun, because I always seen some authors always write characters and never represent their friends or family or.
It's possible. I could make you something that comes down along the line.
That's how it's nice seeing authors. He's always a shock too. Okay, your corner.
Oh, mine?
Question.
All right. You said you had Denny in your head for a while now. Why wait until now to write him in a story? Why wait till now to write this story specifically?
So it all started on last session when I was trying to record the YouTube video, and Brandon and Charles were here as well. I couldn't really get my ideas out, or at least have the video feel fluid or know what I was talking about. And that was because I don't think I was talking about what I was truly passionate about. So I wrote another goals for this week sticky note called, at least it had bulleted 3 things. It was to finish the episodes, editing and video post-processing stuff for the podcast that week. The next one was to find out what I enjoy. And the third one was to finally write a story about Denny. In the past, when I was into art, I wanted to draw him, but I could never truly express what he looked like. I can see it clear as day in my head, but I still try to this day to one day maybe push out what he looks like. But as far as the story, I just started writing. I didn't have any intention of making Awakening. That's why that beginning part is so vague and mysterious. It just started out with me writing, and then this happened. So writing this story feels less like an expectation of myself and others, and something I just feel like I can just pour my mind into and be happy with. So that's why I started writing and why I'm continuing doing so.
Actually, I can relate to what you said about a character in your hand. You don't know how to create them. If you on an earlier episode, I did talk about another personality of mine, and he's actually more or less based off a character in my head I've always had as a kid. He was pretty much how I viewed myself if I was ever in an anime, and that's what the character was supposed to be. It's like, but my problem is now he's more or less became not just something I viewed myself as, but so like another personality of mine. But I can never draw him. I don't know how I would draw him. I don't know how to describe him.
Okay.
Was this like the first book you thought of writing, like throughout your life?
So I don't want to call it a book yet, although I am calling it a novel, but I'm just sticking to story right now. I'm currently 30 pages in and not knowing how long it's going to be, but I do know how it's going to end. I have all the major plot points written out, as well as the turning points and the real big shocking twist that I can't reveal that'll happen down the line.
Yeah, because I told everyone here, but I was actually planning on thinking of like a book to write or just a novel in general.
Yeah.
Since I'm fascinated in the unknown and like everything behind it, like
And mythological, you said?
mythological creatures or like cryptids or
Yeah.
stuff like that.
You should go for detective work.
But I find that stuff interesting because we don't know what's out there and all that. So I feel like
Man, bear, pig.
One of the things too, I've even written like a small little art for the it's just a little doodle on a sticky note for like what the cover of the book would be. And if I were to make these individual chapters with their own covers, they'll be significantly different, featuring like Denny and Sylvia
yeah.
in whichever situation you're in. I also have one of the markings or symbols they're going to come across in the story. And it's the mountain peaks with Reliquia written in another language, as well as there are 3 dashes representing the spirits. The dot represents the heart of the mountain, and the line facing down is Denny. So that's what that. And if you're watching a video version of this, I'll have this up there. It's the symbol that appears on not only the sword, but the back of Denny's hand after being blessed with the power to wield the sword.
Some authors go through this phase, but here's another question. Some authors, when they would take a story they've written or something and rewrite it to a whole new, different kind of story. Example I can give you. Overlord, a series you heard me talk about a lot, its original web novel, the main character actually was a lich. And he was more humanoid, and a lot of characters originally did not exist, and a lot of the plot points in the series was different. But in the light novel version, the version we're all familiar with, everything's different. Alberto actually never existed. She only exists in the light novel version. It was completely rewritten from the original story, and he became an overlord skeletal-like creature in the light novel instead of in the web novel being a lich with humanoid skin.
Now, I can relate to this a lot. As I was telling you guys before we recorded, I have parts written out in the story, pages long, in brackets. And they're parts of the story that I would like to have in the story, but I'm not sure if it's too soon or does this fit. So, and another thing you mentioned was there's 2 different outcomes or 2 different things like
different story
he was
arcs.
supposed to be. That's exactly one of the things I was going through. So yeah, I do relate to that in this story.
Do you have plans?
As far as I at one point I wanted to make 2 versions of the story, because at one point I wanted them to, when they were going up the mountain, I wanted them to go up. I wanted this to happen and lead to this. But now I'm doing this and it leads to this, where they meet one of the characters, Maribel. She wasn't even supposed to exist. I have an entire part in brackets that branches into a whole nother story where Maribel doesn't exist.
This sounds a lot like being a DM in Dungeons and Dragons. You know how many times you guys have literally derailed the story?
Oops.
The Pope was supposed to be a side character. Now he's practically the main good guy. Or something like that.
I mean, the wonderful thing about books, it's all under your control.
Or how about a time when I derailed and turned a normal family of people with a missing kid to a vampire case?
Oh, yeah, and then we had to found about this underground vampire ring. Anyway, let's move on to my second question. Well, actually, I don't know. I think I know the answer to that one already.
Third one, mean?
Yeah, third one then. Who's gonna be the BBEG?
Could you explain that for the
Big
audience?
bad evil guy.
So the main villain.
Yes.
So, as you know, there are the 3 sleeping guardians or spirits: Ephraim, Setharos, and Lysirius. They're all guarded by very, very strong nightmare threats that don't intend on letting anyone wake up these guardians for the sake of their own existence and the rest of the island's existence. There is one more nightmare, but I can't tell you who it's guarding.
If you can't, you can't.
The guardian, that nightmare is so powerful. It is unbelievably more capable than you'll see from these other spirits, or nightmares. But the thing is, I made sure not to make these nightmares like some mysterious foe who just intends on killing you and preventing you from achieving this goal.
So they have reasons and goals themselves.
These nightmares are terrified of you. They don't want you to do this. They're scared out of death for their life, and they're willing to kill you to preserve their own existence. And when I say preserve their own existence, those who played the game know what I'm getting at by that. They're not just trying to save themselves. They're, in a sense, anti-heroes, but it's not made clear until you get towards the end of the story and meet that final nightmare.
Well, damn.
I don't really have like another question, but I just thought of it now. Are there any more like inspirations or things you took into this story from like games or movies, books, other that stuff, or is it just Link's Awakening?
Intentionally, I've been trying to keep my inspirations limited. I guess I won't say intentionally. I've been keeping my inspirations limited because I know I want this to focus on Link's Awakening because that's my story base. But I've blown it up so much from that story that I don't know if I can take much more inspiration without the story losing its original charm. Because that's one thing I'm trying to preserve. This story is not just about waking up the island or waking up these guardians. It's about this main character, Denny, and how he grows with this companion, Sylvia, and how she changes from the beginning of the story into her own independent self.
So, sort of the Shannara book I told you about earlier. That in itself is inspired by Lord of the Rings. I mean, really, it's Lord of the Rings, but with a sword instead of a ring. That's literally what it is.
Actually, another funny thing is Overlord was actually based off a D&D playthrough he did with his friends.
Back to D&D. So, yeah, that's my story, Awakening, and I would love to do updates every now and then as to how I'm doing so far in the story.
One more question.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Is this more not a question related to this story, but do you have plans to write another story, or like, are you looking like example? I was thinking, because this is I want to see how good you are writing. Each one of us can make a character for you, and you have to make that story into that character. No, you understand? No,
that sounds like a gimmick or a game more than that.
No, you don't get the joke, do you? It's basically how he would perceive us. I'm actually just asking to perceive us.
I could
like
do it.
Like the Four Swords of thing. Remember when we were younger?
I would love to do one based on Four Swords where it represents you, Frank, and Josiah.
That's what I was asking, like the Four Swords thing. Like I know we always talked about it.
I would need very descriptive. Well, actually,
use the Four Swords. Just use the Four Swords ones.
I could use Four Swords as a story base.
I don't actually. Do you even guys know what the Four Swords thing is?
What makes me?
Is that why everyone's named by colors?
Yeah. You never noticed that?
What really keeps me writing these stories though and not quit on them is because they're coming from here. They're coming from my heart. Like, I'm not writing this story with the sole intention of like, I'm going to make big bucks on a book or I want to publish this. I just want to write this story because it feels nice to get something out and not hold it in. Yeah,
because I was wondering, because you made a comment a while back at Four Swords, how we had adventures always with us. And we were named after our colors. We always stayed for colors.
Yeah. It's green, blue, purple, and red.
You were green. I was red. Frank was purple. Josiah was blue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that would be possible some way along the line.
Since you basically went off of Link's Awakening, why not do another one?
Yeah. Did you have a question, Brandon?
Not really a question, but I was gonna add on to what Charles said was with the book I'm trying to think of writing. It's like I'm taking like inspiration or like some ideas from like Tomb Raider, Uncharted, and then like the Percy Jackson books.
You want to repeat that?
Percy Jackson, Brandon.
Percy Jackson,
It's
however
okay.
it's called, whatever it's called, I can't exactly remember.
Uh-huh.
And I really enjoyed those books because of like the Greek gods and all that. I like the story of the demigods.
So if anyone would like to check out my first, I believe it's chapters 0 through 2 or 3. I'll need to make sure that's good before I get it out. I'll have it up maybe as a downloadable link on the podcast on a drive file that you can read for yourself. It's going to have a few word errors in it, but I'll try and clean it up as much as possible before I do so. My long-term goal for this story is to not only share it somewhere on the internet, but I would love to make a webcomic out of it some way along the line. And if someone like finds it and like really, really wants to like make like I guess like or not even that, just feedback would be like the best thing ever. And the biggest help that you could do for me is to share this with as many people as you can, because the best feeling in the world is people seeing your work and if not enjoying it, at least leaving feedback. So I would love to share Awakening, and I would love for you to check it out and read it.
So I have a few questions. When did you think about writing your story, Brandon? Or when did this thought cross your mind? Exactly.
I know this is derailing from Xavier's thing. I'm sorry if it is.
Well, it's no longer derailing because I just wrapped up my area.
There's a point in time like this. I just want to know when you start writing this.
I know it wasn't really like. I would say it was like a few months ago, because I watched this like one video on what was it, like cryptids or something like that,
Now,
and
be
then
honest. When? I know
when
this is what you're saying. I know you're saying this, but okay. About around the same time, you're thinking of writing your book, and you started getting really heavy into character backstories, was when he started his book. Xavier, you've been an unintentional inspiration to these two.
I mean, he's been writing his character background since before
Yeah,
I was writing.
Yeah, I
No,
actually.
you're Overlord? No, that's like a whole 2 pages worth of information you got down on that.
I don't know. The thing
And it
is,
got even more detailed after he started his book.
yeah, because the thing is, for me is when I redo something, when I write something, I usually more I rewrite it, the better it sounds.
Yeah.
That's why I don't want. Actually, that's why I when I was a kid, I wanted to write a book, but my problem was I didn't like how it first turned out, so I would rewrite it. It sounds better. I would keep it rewrite. My problem is I always want to write something. That's why right now. Currently, we have a special D&D playthrough going on right now. It's the overall character. I'm constantly reworking and making a story more detailed. Like,
See that, and back to what you were talking about, like trying to make a narrative that works. You're gonna like, you have like 2 stories, you like them both, or you think one needs to change. That leads to like these differences and these adaptations.
yeah, and me and Brandon pretty much just smashed it together and figured out a funny story of my character. And pretty much, I'm a mess.
So I looked at my notes, and the first thing I wrote for my story was May 14th. So it was like a month ago, yeah, at this point. But yeah, I thought of it because of like cryptids and that stuff, and I wanted to make an adventure of like trying to 2 siblings trying to figure out the unknown from their parents.
I really do
passing.
think you should write a story based on the Pokemon world, that 2 brothers story that you were talking about at one point. I think you should go back to that and really just get into it.
Well, I mean, it was people that were actually Pokemon. Well, not people actually Pokemon, but it was just stories about a story about a Pokemon. But I guess I can like change that up and then make it two brothers on an adventure.
Either way that looks or sounds best to you that makes you want to make it into a story. I'm practicing a method right now in my story, and that's kind of how I got the beginning to catch so well. The method is called, it's a basic college level tool. It's called show, don't tell. I'm not going to tell you what happened, but I'm going to show it to you.
Mm-hmm. Actually, and the thing is, when I was younger, there's always a story I always had in my head while I'm right. It's about a main character who's not even the main character of this story. He's the side character of the story, and he's pretty much going through all of these different like adventures. He's pretty much a trickster. He pretty much takes on a form of like some like nobody and joins the party of the actual hero of the story, saves the day, disappears, and goes to another story. Pretty much the point of view from a side character, not the main character. And I've always like as a character, he's not in like. I always had because that's how I always viewed my character, as someone who's never the main character of the story himself.
More of a observer.
He observes how the story goes.
Oh, then you would do great in a second person point of view.
Yeah, because that's how I've always viewed my character. That's why I never actually don't want. If I ever make him as an actual character, I do not want him as the main character. He is not the main character. He's mainly a person who
third person.
Maybe. He mainly is a person who watches and messes with it if something doesn't go right. Let's say I was thinking of having when the hero was about to die, he will help them, but without them knowing, or something like that.
Or it sounds like a DM. That's literally what the story is.
Well, what it's making me think of is it's not Robin from Fire Emblem. It's the strategist from Fire Emblem 7. He was always referenced and talked about by the characters, but he was never the focus. The focus was whoever was the star of that arc, being Lynn or Eliwood.
Hector Elwood.
Yeah, it was never specifically about you, the strategist. No. So yeah, I think it wasn't until later they actually started making the strategist main character in this as the and
an actual class and everything.
Yeah, like real involvement in the story.
Yeah, that's how I've always viewed my character.
It was Awakening where like you were the main circle of the discussion.
Yep. Yeah, just fine. That's how I always viewed my character. That's why that's why I don't know how to write a story. How would I write a story where the main character is not the main character?
Well, I've
done it. I'm actually happy. You
would have to focus on someone else.
Yeah. Like him, like through his point of view. Like I actually found a series. I'm so happy. I did find a series where the main character was not the main character's story. I'm actually happy. I found a couple of series, so I'm thanks to that now I have ideas how to do it.
Yeah. I think what I'm going to do is have a section or a separate episode that I'll record today, and it'll just be me reading chapters 0 through 3. I'm just going to let you guys know if you guys ever do get to read the story in its complete form. There's
going to be some heartbreaks. I already said I already cried in the beginning.
No, it's much worse than any killing off. It's going to attack you psychologically.
You got him a kill?
I already have it written down in my plots. So back. So for you, Brandon, did you have something to
add? No. Well, yeah.
I'm done my parts.
Like I said earlier, but like I cried when like in the book, or not the novel. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Brandon read my novel and it actually drove you to tears. What I'm going to do is I'm definitely going to read it out. And I'm going to change a few parts, but not much. The story will remain the same. Yeah. Are you excited for more?
I am.
This is 100% a passion project. I've never seen myself as a writer, nor did I ever want to be.
Yeah, I know throughout like school and that stuff, I had the urge to like write something. Not middle school, elementary school, 5th grade was like a book about like Pokemon. Middle school, 8th grade, writing a story about two brothers going into like a secret room in their house, and it leads to a basement. and the brothers hit a button and they like revert back in time to like the Egyptian times of like Cleopatra and stuff like that.
And then a menacing homosexual vampire approached them.
Oh my god.
Ooh, we're that one anime now.
If you get the reference, praise you.
And then now a story about the unknown.
Yeah. I like that. I hope you really take off with that. Like, get those gears going. I'm excited for you. Have you thought of a name?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Are you willing to share?
It might, the name might change. I'm not too sure, but the name right now is called The Beasts Unknown.
The Beast Unknown.